Rosa's hand shook as she wiped down the Italian marble coffee table. 3 months working in this mansion, and she still couldn't wrap her head around the sheer size of the place. The Almeida family's living room was bigger than the entire house where she lived with her son. Disgusting! Mrs. Almeida's sharp voice cut through the air behind her. Rosa spun around, startled. Her employer stood in the doorway clutching a fur coat like it was a dirty rag. 3 hours of cleaning and there's still dust on this table. For what I'm paying you, I expected at least basic competence. Rosa dropped her gaze. She needed this job. Lucas's treatment couldn't wait. I'm sorry, Mrs. Almeida. I'll wipe it down again. Don't bother. Mrs. Almeida tossed the coat onto the marble floor Rosa had just finished polishing. The fabric slid across and stopped dead center in the room. Since you love cleaning so much, go ahead and grab that too. That's what housekeepers are for, after all. Rosa's cheeks burned. 45 years old, and she still had to swallow humiliation like she was a child. She bent down slowly, picked up the coat, hung it on the hall rack. Mrs. Almeida had already disappeared upstairs, leaving a trail of expensive perfume in the air. Rosa returned to the living room, took a deep breath. The cloth in her hand was still damp. She walked toward the white marble fireplace, started dusting the gold-trimmed frame, decorating the wall just above it. It was massive, hand-carved, the kind that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. Inside the frame hung a portrait. A small boy, no older than 7, stared at the camera with piercing green eyes. He wore a child's formal suit, his posture rigid, his blonde hair combed to the side. But it was the look in his eyes that caught your attention. A sad look, almost frightened, as if he'd posed for that photo against his will. Rosa cleaned the glass with circular motions. For a second, something about that child's face seemed familiar. She stopped, tilted her head. The eyes, those green eyes. She knew them from somewhere. The cloth slipped from her hand. Her heart began racing out of control. It couldn't be. Impossible. She moved closer, examined every feature of that small face. The broad forehead, the small nose, the thin lips, the chin with a faint mark barely visible. Gabriel, she whispered. Her legs went weak. 30 years. It had been 30 years since she'd last seen that face. But it was him. She was absolutely certain. Gabriel Ferreira, the boy who slept in the bunk next to hers at the Santa Clara Orphanage. The boy who disappeared one Tuesday afternoon without saying goodbye to anyone. Rosa reached out with a trembling hand, touched the cold glass of the portrait. Memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Gabriel sitting on the edge of her bunk, crying softly at night when he thought no one could hear. Gabriel sharing his lunch cookies with her when the portions came up short. Gabriel saying that one day rich parents would come for him, that he'd live in a big house, that he'd never go hungry again. You made it, Rosa murmured, feeling tears well up. You actually got out of that place. The portrait started to wobble. Rosa realized too late that she was gripping the frame too hard. She tried to hold on, but her fingers slipped. The gold frame tipped forward, struck the edge of the fireplace, crashed to the floor with a loud bang. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces. Rosa gasped, dropped to her knees, tried to gather the shards. No, 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 she repeated, desperate. Mrs. Almeida was going to kill her. She'd lose her job on the spot. What the hell was that? Mr. Almeida's deep voice came from the hallway. Heavy footsteps approached. Rosa looked up, saw her employer entering the room with a furious expression. He looked at the portrait on the floor, at the glass scattered everywhere, at Rosa kneeling in the middle of the mess. I'm so sorry, Mr. Almeida. It was an accident. I was just cleaning and... Rosa started, but her voice failed. She looked at her employer's face. Grey hair at the temples, expression lines around the eyes, the commanding posture of someone who'd always had money, but the eyes, those green eyes, and there, on his chin, a small scar, barely noticeable. Rosa felt the air leave her lungs. That boy, she said, pointing at the portrait on the floor. Her voice came out hoarse, choked. I know that boy. Mr. Almeida advanced 2 steps toward Rosa. His jaw was clenched, the veins in his neck bulging. You know him? You know him? His voice came out in a roar. You just destroyed a frame worth more than 6 months of your salary, and you have the nerve to stand there talking nonsense? Rosa stood up, swaying, her legs shaking. Glass shards crunched under her worn shoe soles. Sir, I swear it was an accident. I didn't mean to break it, but that boy... She pointed at the portrait on the floor. That boy's name is Gabriel Ferreira. He slept in the bunk next to mine at the Santa Clara Orphanage. It's been 30 years since I've seen that face, but I'm absolutely certain it's him. Orphanage. Mr. Almeida repeated the word as if it tasted bitter. Something flashed through his green eyes. A quick spark. Fear, perhaps. Or recognition. You're delusional. That portrait is of my nephew who lives in Europe. It has nothing to do with any orphanage. No, sir. I know it's him. Rosa took a step forward, forgetting for a moment that she was talking to her employer. Gabriel Ferreira. He was 7 years old when he disappeared from the orphanage. It was on a Tuesday morning. The director called him to her office, and when we came back from lunch, his bunk was empty. Clothes, shoes, everything was gone. The director just said a family had adopted him. Mr. Almeida's jaw tightened. Enough. You're fired. Get your things and leave my house right now. Sir, please. Rosa felt tears fill her eyes. I need this job. My son needs treatment. I can't lose this work. But I'm not lying. That boy... She swallowed hard, forced the words out. That boy was my best friend. We slept in neighboring bunks. He had nightmares every night, and I'd climb down from my bunk to sit beside him until he fell back asleep. Rosa closed her eyes, and the memories came as clear as if it had been yesterday. Gabriel curled up on the thin mattress, the blanket pulled up to his chin, shaking. I dreamed no one came for me, he'd whisper. And Rosa would stay there, holding his small hand, telling him everything would be okay, that his parents would show up one day. He always talked about how a rich family would adopt him. Rosa opened her eyes, faced Mr. Almeida. The other boys mocked him, called him a liar, said orphanage kids don't become important people. But Gabriel repeated every day that he'd get out of there, that he'd live in a big house, that he'd have nice clothes and real food on the table. Mr. Almeida's face had gone pale. The color had drained from his cheeks. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I told you to shut up, he said, but his voice came out weak, almost inaudible. What's going on here? Mrs. Almeida appeared in the doorway, already changed into her evening dress. Her eyes swept the scene. The fallen portrait, the glass shards, Rosa standing in the middle of the chaos, her husband white as a sheet. You broke Gabriel's portrait? That portrait was a family heirloom. Rosa turned to Mrs. Almeida. Do you know who the boy in this photo is? Of course I do. It's my husband as a child, the day he was adopted by the Almeida family. Mrs. Almeida crossed her arms. And you're going to pay for every penny of that frame. You can count on it. The floor seemed to tremble beneath Rosa's feet. Adopted by the Almeida family. Gabriel had been adopted. Gabriel had become Mr. Almeida. She looked at her employer again, really looked. The shape of the face was the same. The nose had grown, the jaw had squared off, expression lines had appeared. But underneath it all was the boy from the orphanage. You're him, Rosa whispered. You're Gabriel. This woman has lost her mind. Mr. Almeida turned to his wife. Call security. I want her out of here in 5 minutes. No, wait. Rosa extended her hand, desperate. Gabriel, it's me, Rosa. Rosa Ferreira. We grew up together at Santa Clara. Don't you remember me? Mr. Almeida took a step back. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. My name is Eduardo Almeida. Always has been, and I never lived in any orphanage. But Rosa saw it, saw the almost imperceptible tremor in his hand, saw the way he averted his gaze, saw how his breathing became irregular, and saw the scar on his chin. Small, thin, white, exactly where Gabriel had hurt himself when he fell down the orphanage stairs at 5 years old. You have the same scar, Rosa said, pointing. On your chin. You fell down the stairs trying to reach a ball that got stuck on the roof. You got 3 stitches. Mr. Almeida touched his chin instinctively. The color had completely vanished from his face now. The silence that fell over the room was so heavy Rosa could hear her own heartbeat. Mr. Almeida still had his hand on his chin, fingers pressing the old scar. His green eyes locked onto hers, and in that instant Rosa saw everything. Saw the 7-year-old boy from years ago, saw the fear, saw the shame. "You're him," Rosa repeated, but now it wasn't a question, it was a certainty. "You're Gabriel from the orphanage, the boy who slept next to me, the boy who vanished 30 years ago." "That's enough!" Mr. Almeida exploded, his voice echoing off the walls. "I don't know what sick game you're trying to play, but it won't work. You invaded my home, broke a family heirloom, and now you're making up insane stories about me. I'm going to sue you for defamation." But his voice was too high-pitched, too desperate. Rosa recognized that tone. It was the same tone Gabriel used when he lied to the orphanage director, claiming he hadn't been the one who took extra cookies from the pantry. "Why are you lying?" Rosa took another step forward. "Gabriel, it's me, Rosa. I never judged you. I never laughed at you when the other boys made fun. I always believed you'd make it out of that place. My husband, the son of some orphanage maid?" Mrs. Almeida let out a short, dry laugh. "How ridiculous. Eduardo comes from a traditional family. The Almeidas have 4 generations of businessmen. This is so absurd, it's almost comical." "Shut up, Beatrice." Mr. Almeida turned to his wife with a withering look. Mrs. Almeida blinked, surprised. It was the first time Rosa had seen her employer speak to his wife that way. "Excuse me?" Mrs. Almeida narrowed her eyes. "What did you just say?" "I told you to shut up." Mr. Almeida took a deep breath, ran his hand through his hair. When he turned back to Rosa, all the anger had vanished from his face. In its place was only exhaustion, a deep, decades-old exhaustion. "You want to know the truth? You really want to know?" Rosa nodded slowly. "Yes." The word came out in a whisper. "Yes, I'm him. I'm the Gabriel Ferreira who lived at the Santa Clara orphanage." Satisfied, the air escaped from Rosa's lungs. Knowing was one thing, hearing the confirmation was something completely different. "Gabriel," she said, and her voice broke. You really did it. You got out." "I did." Gabriel let out a bitter laugh. "The Almeida family adopted me when I was 7. Changed my name, changed my birth certificate, erased any trace of who I was. Turned me into Eduardo Almeida, heir to the fortune, only son of the perfect couple." "Wait." Mrs. Almeida was gaping now. "You never told me this. You always said you were their biological son. Because that's what they wanted." Gabriel pointed at the portrait on the floor. "You know what that photo is? It's the day they picked me up from the orphanage. The social worker took that picture as a record of the adoption. It's the only thing left of Gabriel Ferreira. Everything else was destroyed, burned, buried." Rosa looked at the fallen portrait, at the sad-eyed boy, dressed in formal clothes that didn't suit him. "Why did you keep the photo then?" Gabriel was silent for a long moment. "Because I needed to remember," he finally said. "I needed to remember where I came from. I needed to remember that I managed to escape that hell." "Hell?" Rosa felt like she'd been slapped. "Gabriel, we were poor, but it wasn't hell. We had each other. We helped one another." "You call that help?" Gabriel laughed, and the sound was cruel. "Sleeping in the cold because there weren't enough blankets? Eating spoiled food because the orphanage didn't have money to buy fresh food? Wearing torn clothes, tight shoes, putting up with the other boys, mocking us all the time? But we survived." Rosa felt tears roll down her face. "We supported each other. Do you remember when I got sick and you shared your plate with me? Do you remember when we made plans about what it would be like when we grew up? I remember." Gabriel's voice dropped low, dangerous. "I remember every second of that misery, and that's why when the Almeida family adopted me, I promised myself I'd never go back to that world, never be Gabriel Ferreira, the orphan again. I became Eduardo Almeida, the businessman, the rich man, the owner of this mansion." He spread his arms, gesturing at the luxurious room around them. "You think I achieved all this by being sentimental, by feeling sorry for people like you? I escaped that misery, Rosa. I won at life. And you? He looked her up and down, his gaze full of contempt. You're still in the same place as 30 years ago. Poor, working as a maid, cleaning other people's filth. I won. You lost. The words were like stab wounds. Rosa staggered backward, feeling her chest tighten. This wasn't the Gabriel she'd known. The Gabriel she'd known was kind, was a dreamer, was the only person who made her believe life could be better. But then she remembered something she'd kept all these years, something that belonged to him. I have something of yours, Rosa said, wiping tears with the back of her hand. Something you left at the orphanage when you were taken away. Gabriel frowned. What? A wooden box? Rosa saw his eyes widen. Remember? That old box you kept under your mattress. The director was going to throw it out after you were adopted, but I took it. I've kept it all these years. The color drained from Gabriel's face again. You have the box? I do. Rosa nodded. And there's something inside it. Something very important. She paused, watched the desperation grow in his green eyes. Letters, Gabriel. Letters from your real mother. Gabriel froze. His breathing stopped. For 5 full seconds he remained completely still, as if someone had hit the pause button. Then his chest rose in a deep, shaky breath. Letters. The word came out hoarse. What letters? Letters from your biological mother. Rosa watched how his fingers clenched into fists. You never knew, did you, that she left letters for you? My mother, Gabriel shook his head. My mother abandoned me in an orphanage. She didn't leave any letters. She didn't abandon you, Gabriel. Rosa took a step forward. She died in childbirth. But before she died, she wrote letters, 3 letters, left them with the hospital nurse, asked her to give them to you when you grew up. Gabriel's chin trembled. He bit his lower lip, turned his face away. You're lying. I'm not. The nurse took the letters to the orphanage, gave them to Sister Lucia. The sister was going to give them to you when you turned 10, but you were adopted before that. She gave them to me to keep, said if I ever found you I should return them. How much? Gabriel turned back, and now his eyes were red. How much do you want? 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Just name your price. Rosa blinked, confused. Price? For your silence. Gabriel pulled his wallet from his pocket, opened it, started counting bills. You'll take this money. You'll disappear from my life. You'll forget you saw me. You'll forget this conversation happened. And most importantly, you'll forget about those letters. Gabriel, I didn't come here asking for money. Everyone has a price. Gabriel threw a stack of bills on the coffee table. 100,000 rays. Enough to pay for your son's treatment and have plenty left over. Take it and leave. Rosa looked at the money. 100,000 rays. It was more than she'd earned in 3 years working as a housekeeper. It was Lucas's complete treatment. It was the chance to see her son walk again without pain. She reached out her hand, her fingers almost touching the bills. Then she stopped. No. Rosa pulled her hand back. I won't take your money. What do you mean you won't take it? Mrs. Almeida interjected, her voice shrill. Are you stupid? 100,000 reais. People like you will never see that kind of money again in your life. Eduardo. Mrs. Almeida turned to her husband, her voice low but urgent. Call security. We'll make her sign a confidentiality agreement. If she says anything about this to anyone, we'll sue her for everything she has, which is nothing, but at least she'll stay quiet. Good idea. Gabriel grabbed his phone. I'll call the lawyer too. Prepare an agreement with a non-disclosure clause. If she opens her mouth, the penalty is 1 million rees. You don't understand. Rosa shook her head. I didn't come here to blackmail you, Gabriel. I didn't even know you worked here. I came because I need to work to survive. I need the salary. I need to pay the month's bills. Then take the 100,000 and solve your life once and for all. Gabriel pointed at the money on the table. And then what? When the money runs out, what do I do? Rosa felt frustration grow in her chest. You think 100,000 reais lasts forever? I have a son who needs medicine every month, appointments every month, tests every month. That money runs out in a year, maybe less, and then I'm back in the same place, working as a maid, earning minimum wage, cleaning other people's houses. At least you're still alive to work. Gabriel crossed his arms. Some people don't even have that. Rosa looked at him, really looked, at the Italian suit that probably cost 5 of her salaries, at the gold watch on his wrist that was likely worth more than the apartment where she lived, at the straight posture, the raised chin, the expression of superiority. "You've changed," Rosa said quietly. "The Gabriel I knew would never talk like that. He would never step on someone. He knew what it was like to suffer. That's exactly why I talk like this." Gabriel took a step forward, and now he was very close to her. "Because I know what suffering is. I know what it's like to go to bed hungry. I know what it's like to wear old clothes, worn-out shoes. I know what it's like to be humiliated, despised, treated like trash. And that's why I climbed up in life, to never go through that again. While you," he looked her up and down, "you're still in the same misery as 30 years ago. I won. You lost." The words cut deeper this time. Rosa felt tears fill her eyes again, but forced her head to remain upright. "You know what the difference is between us, Gabriel. I may be poor. I may be cleaning floors. I may be wearing old clothes. But I haven't lost my humanity. I haven't forgotten where I came from. I haven't turned my back on people who were once like me." "Enough with the pretty speeches." Mrs. Almeida grabbed her phone. "I'm calling security. This woman is crossing every line." "Wait." Rosa pulled something from her apron pocket. It was a piece of crumpled paper, yellowed with time. "Before you throw me out, you need to know something. The letters Gabriel's mother left don't just talk about love. They talk about something more." Gabriel tensed. "What are you talking about?" "Your mother wasn't just any woman, Gabriel." Rosa unfolded the paper, looked at the handwritten words. "She was a teacher, had a university degree, and came from a family with money. The letters explain everything. They explain why she had you alone. They explain why she left you at the orphanage. And most importantly," Rosa paused, watched the desperation grow in his eyes, "they explain about the inheritance she left you." The word inheritance echoed through the room like thunder. Gabriel went pale, his hand still holding the phone in the air. Mrs. Almeida spun around sharply, her eyes fixed on Rosa. "Inheritance?" Gabriel repeated, his voice coming out thread-thin. "What inheritance?" "Sit down." Rosa pointed at the sofa. "This is going to take a while." "I'm not sitting down, damn it." Gabriel took 2 steps forward. "Just tell me what you know." Rosa took a deep breath, put the paper back in her apron pocket. "Your mother's name was Helena Ferreira. She was a literature teacher at a private school in São Paulo. Came from a traditional family, with money, a respected name. At 25, she fell in love with a man, got pregnant. But her family didn't accept the relationship." Gabriel was motionless now, his eyes glued to her. "Your grandmother, Helena's mother, was a rigid woman. When she discovered the pregnancy, she gave an ultimatum. Either Helena got an abortion and came back home, or she was expelled from the family without a penny. Helena chose you. Left home 5 months pregnant, went to live in a rented room, continued teaching until the 8th month. Rosa saw how his jaw trembled. "The delivery was complicated. Helena had a hemorrhage. The doctors tried to save her but couldn't. She died 3 hours after you were born." "No!" Gabriel's voice came out broken. "No! The orphanage director said my mother abandoned me. Said she left me at the door and never came back." "The director lied." Rosa shook her head. "Helena left you at the orphanage because she had no one. Your father had disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy. Her family had cut off contact. She knew she was going to die in childbirth, the doctors had warned her, so she wrote 3 letters, one for you to read as a child, one for you to read as an adult, and one last one for you to read when you had your own child." Gabriel's legs failed. He sat on the sofa, his head falling into his hands. His shoulders began to shake. "She loved you, Gabriel." Rosa approached slowly. "She died loving you, and she left something for you. Money she'd saved. It wasn't much, but it was enough for you to have a better life. She asked the nurse to deliver everything to the orphanage along with you, the money and the letters, but I never received anything." Gabriel lifted his head, his face wet. No one ever told me about any money, because someone stole it. Rosa said the words slowly, letting their weight sink in. The orphanage director took the money, kept it all, and told the nurse to leave, threatened to sue if she told anyone. That old... Gabriel clenched his fists. That damn old woman kept my mother's money. But she didn't manage to get the letters. Rosa put her hand in her apron pocket. The nurse was friends with Sister Lucia. She delivered the letters in secret. The sister kept them waiting for the right day to give them to you. But you were adopted before that, and she gave them to you. Gabriel looked at Rosa with red eyes. Why? Why give them to you? Because I was your best friend. Because I promised that if I ever found you, I'd return them. Rosa pulled a yellowed envelope from her pocket. It was small, the size of a regular letter, but well preserved, wrapped in clear plastic. Here they are, the 3 letters your mother wrote, her last words to you. Gabriel reached out his hand, trembling. His fingers almost touched the envelope. Then Mrs. Almeida's voice cut through the moment. "Don't touch that envelope, Eduardo." Gabriel stopped, his hand still suspended in air. "What? You don't know what's in there?" Mrs. Almeida walked until she stood between them. "It could be anything, could be a trap, could be a scam. Beatrice, get out of the way." "I won't." She crossed her arms. "This woman shows up here out of nowhere with a touching story about your dead mother, letters mysteriously preserved for 30 years, and you're just going to believe it? Have you lost your mind?" "I'm not lying." Rosa held the envelope tighter. "These letters are real." "Then give them here." Mrs. Almeida extended her hand. "I'll take them to a lab to verify authenticity. If they're really genuine, we'll return them." "No." Rosa backed away. "These letters aren't yours. They're Gabriel's. My husband isn't in a condition to make rational decisions right now." Mrs. Almeida took a step forward. "He's emotionally shaken, so I'll make the decision for him." "Give me the envelope." "Rosa." Gabriel's voice came out low. "Please, I need those letters." Rosa looked at him, at the red eyes, at the hunched shoulders, at the vulnerability stamped on his face. There was the Gabriel from 30 years ago, the frightened boy from the orphanage asking for help. "I'll give you the letters," Rosa said slowly, "but only if you promise one thing." "What do you want? Money? How much?" "I don't want money." Rosa shook her head. "I want you to stop being ashamed of who you were. I want you to look in the mirror and see Gabriel Ferreira, not just Eduardo Almeida. I want you to honor your mother's memory. She died to give you a chance to live, and you're throwing it away, pretending she never existed." Heavy silence fell. Gabriel stood up, faced Rosa. For a long moment no one spoke, then he extended his hand. "I promise." Rosa held the envelope against her chest. "Swear it?" "Swear by your mother's memory that you will honor the truth." "I swear." The words came out firm. "By the memory of Helena Ferreira, my mother, I swear." Rosa extended the envelope. Gabriel took it with both hands as if holding something sacred. He looked at the name written by hand on the front. "Gabriel Ferreira, my beloved son." A tear fell on the paper. "I'll get it from my house," Rosa said. "I live 40 minutes from here. I'll be back in 2 hours with the letters." "Thank you," Gabriel whispered. "Thank you for keeping this for me." Rosa nodded, turned to leave, walked past Mrs. Almeida, who had a strange expression on her face, something between rage and calculation. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine, but ignored it. She grabbed her purse from the kitchen cabinet, left through the back door. As soon as the door closed, Mrs. Almeida grabbed her phone. "You're going to let her just walk away like that?" She looked at her husband. "You actually believe this whole story?" Gabriel was staring at the empty envelope in his hands. "I need those letters, Beatriz. Then let's make sure she comes back." Mrs. Almeida dialed a number. "And let's make sure that after this, she never opens her mouth about your origins again." The call connected. "Hello? I want to hire a private investigation service." "Urgent." The private detective answered on the second ring. Mrs. Almeida was locked in the office, the door closed, her voice low but firm. Outside, Gabriel remained sitting on the living room sofa, the empty envelope still in his hands. "I need complete information on a person. Full name Rosa Ferreira, approximately 45 years old, works as a housekeeper. Mrs. Almeida drummed her fingers on the mahogany desk. I want to know everything. Where she lives, who she lives with, debts, lawsuits, weak points, everything. When does the lady need this? Yesterday. Mrs. Almeida looked at her watch. I have 2 hours. I'll pay double if you can get it in 1 hour. I'll see what I can do. The call dropped. Mrs. Almeida stood looking out the office window, watching the city lights below. That housekeeper wasn't going to ruin everything she'd built. The story of Eduardo Almeida, successful businessman from a traditional family, couldn't be tarnished by a past in a miserable orphanage. Their clients, the partners, high society, no one could know. The phone rang 40 minutes later. Mrs. Almeida answered before the first ring finished. I got the information. The detective's voice came metallic through the phone. Rosa Ferreira, 45 years old widow, lives in the Penha neighborhood in a rented 2-room apartment. Has worked as a housekeeper for 20 years. Has a history of 3 previous jobs, all terminations due to budget cuts. And she has a son, Lucas Ferreira, 20 years old, wheelchair-bound. Cerebral palsy since birth. Getting treatment at the Hospital das Clínicas, but is on the waiting list for an experimental surgery that could improve his mobility. The spot came up 2 weeks ago. Surgery scheduled for 3 months from now. Mrs. Almeida smiled. Perfect. Send everything by email. Photos too, if you have them. 10 minutes later, she was back in the living room. Gabriel had moved. He was standing in front of the fallen portrait, looking at the face of the 7-year-old boy. Mrs. Almeida approached from behind, placed her hand on his shoulder. You don't have to do this, Eduardo. Do what? Relive this past. Open these wounds. She came around, stood facing him. You've built a new life. You're successful, respected, admired. Why throw it all away because of some old letters? Because they're words from my mother. Gabriel looked at her, and in his green eyes was an ancient pain. You don't understand. I spent my entire life knowing nothing about her, thinking she'd abandoned me. And now I find out she died because of me, that she loved me, that she left letters for me. His voice broke. I need to read those letters, Beatrice. Then read them. But afterward you burn them, bury them, forget, and make sure that woman never opens her mouth again. How? Mrs. Almeida opened her phone, showed him the screen. It was a photo of a young man in a wheelchair smiling at the camera. That's her son, Lucas Ferreira. He has cerebral palsy. He's on the waiting list for a surgery that could change his life. Gabriel frowned. So what? So what is that spots in public hospitals are fragile? One phone call to the right person, and that spot disappears. The boy goes back to the end of the line. Waits another 5-10 years, if he survives that long. You're not going to do that. Gabriel backed away. Beatrice, that's inhumane. What's inhumane is this woman entering our lives, digging up our past, threatening our reputation. Mrs. Almeida put away her phone. I'm just protecting our family, protecting you. No. Gabriel shook his head. I won't let you do that. Rosa doesn't deserve it. Rosa doesn't deserve it? Mrs. Almeida let out a cold laugh. You've gone soft. You're letting sentimentality cloud your judgment. The doorbell rang. Both turned toward the door. Gabriel took a step, but Mrs. Almeida was faster. She moved in front of him, opened the door before he could stop her. Rosa stood at the entrance, holding an old shoebox. The cardboard was faded, tied with string. Her eyes were red, as if she'd cried on the way back. I brought them. Rosa extended the box. The letters are in here, along with other things Sister Lucia saved for you. Gabriel approached, reached out his hand to take it. Mrs. Almeida blocked him. Before we take this, we need to settle some details. Her voice was too sweet, dangerous. Your son, Lucas, is on the waiting list for surgery, isn't he? Rosa froze. How do you know that? I know a lot about you, Rosa. Mrs. Almeida crossed her arms. I know where you live. I know how much you earn. I know you owe 3 months' rent. I know your son depends on public health care to survive. Beatrice, Gabriel pulled her arm. "Stop this. Let me finish." Mrs. Almeida pulled free. "Here's the proposal, Rosa. You hand over those letters, take your 100,000 reis and disappear. Never talk to my husband again. Never mention the orphanage again. Never tell this story to anyone. In exchange, your son's treatment continues normally. Are you threatening me?" Rosa clutched the box to her chest. "I'm being clear." Mrs. Almeida tilted her head. "You choose. Accept our generous offer, and your son has a chance to walk, or insist on being stubborn, and he loses his spot at the hospital. Simple as that." Rosa looked at Gabriel, waited for him to say something, waited for him to defend her, waited for the boy from the orphanage, the one who shared food with her, to appear. Gabriel looked away. The silence hurt more than any words. Rosa felt something break inside her chest. She looked at the box in her hands, at the letters she'd kept for 30 years, letters from a dead mother to a son who'd become a stranger. "You know what the worst part is," Rosa said, her voice coming out steady despite the tears. "It's not the threat. It's not the blackmail. It's seeing that you really did die that day you left the orphanage, Gabriel. The boy I knew would never let someone threaten a mother with a sick child, would never stay silent while someone stepped on those weaker than him." "Rosa," Gabriel started. "No." Rosa backed away, tucking the box back under her arm. "You don't deserve these letters. Your mother died believing you'd be a good man. She was wrong." Rosa turned her back, started descending the entrance steps. Gabriel took a step forward. "Wait! The letters! They can stay with me." Rosa didn't look back. "I'll keep them for someone who deserves them. Someone who still has a heart." The door closed. Gabriel stood frozen at the entrance, listening to her footsteps fading on the sidewalk. The old shoebox disappearing into the night. Gabriel didn't sleep that night. He lay in the king-size bed, staring at the high ceiling, listening to Beatrice's regular breathing beside him. The old shoebox wouldn't leave his mind. The letters he'd never read, his mother's words he'd never know. 3 in the morning. 4, 5. The sun started rising through the huge bedroom window. Gabriel got up slowly, went down to the office. He needed to do something, anything to stop thinking. That's when he saw the attic ladder. He never went up there. It was full of old things from his adoptive parents, boxes with old documents, yellowed photos, unimportant papers. But that morning, something pulled him, a strange feeling in his chest, as if he needed to search for something. Gabriel climbed the creaking ladder. The attic smelled of mold and dust. He turned on the dim light, looked around, boxes and more boxes stacked up. He started opening them one by one. Photos of the Almeida family, company documents, old certificates. Then he found a wooden trunk in the darkest corner. It was locked. Gabriel forced the lock with a screwdriver he found nearby. The lid opened with a crack. Inside were folders organized by year. Gabriel grabbed the oldest one. 1995, the year he was adopted. He opened it slowly. The first page made him freeze. It was a contract, an adoption contract. But it wasn't a normal contract. It had strange clauses, money amounts. Gabriel read it once, read it twice, read it 3 times without being able to believe it. Adoption contract through asset transfer. The adoption of the minor Gabriel Ferreira will be executed upon receipt of the amount of 850,000 euros, 850,000 reis, originating from the maternal inheritance left by Helena Ferreira through her parent, Mrs. Marta Silveira. Gabriel sat on the wooden floor. His hands trembled holding the paper. Inheritance. His mother had left an inheritance. It wasn't a small amount. It was almost 1,000,000 reais. In 1995, that was worth even more. He continued reading. There were more documents, bank receipts, transfers, deposit confirmations. The Almeida family had received all the money, used it to expand the company, buy stocks, invest in real estate. Gabriel had never seen a single cent. He turned the page, found a handwritten letter. The handwriting was careful, old-fashioned. It started with, "Dear Helena." It was from his grandmother, Helena's mother. It explained everything, how she'd expelled her daughter from home. how she regretted it when she learned of her death in childbirth, how she discovered she had a grandson in an orphanage, how she gathered all the money she had to ensure her grandson would have a better life. "I can't raise him," the letter said. "I'm old, sick, in no condition, but I can ensure he has a good family. I leave my entire inheritance as a condition for adoption. I want him to study at the best schools, live in a decent house, have everything my Helena wanted to give him. Please take good care of my grandson. He's all that's left of my daughter." Gabriel dropped the letter. It floated to the floor. He sat there, breathing heavily, his chest tight. 30 years. 30 years believing the Almeida family had adopted him out of kindness, out of love, out of charity. But it was a lie. All a lie. They'd made a deal. They'd bought him, taken his grandmother's money, and used it to get even richer. And he never knew. He grew up thinking he was a lucky orphan. A wretch who got the chance to become wealthy. But he wasn't a wretch. He was an heir. The money was his, always had been his. Gabriel came down from the attic with his hands full of papers, entered the bedroom. Beatrice was waking up, stretching. She looked at him, frowned. "Are you okay? You're pale. We need to talk." Gabriel threw the documents on the bed, about how my parents stole my inheritance. It took 2 hours to explain everything. Beatrice tried to defend them, tried to justify. "They gave you a good life," she said. "You had everything." "With my money." Gabriel pointed at the papers. "Everything I have was mine from the start, and they hid it, lied, made me believe it was a favor from them." Gabriel grabbed the car keys. Beatrice asked where he was going. He didn't answer, left the house still in pajamas, drove through the empty Sunday morning streets. He had to find Rosa, had to ask for forgiveness, had to make everything right. It took an hour to find the address. It was an old building in the Penha neighborhood. Peeling paint, broken windows, staircase with no lights. Gabriel climbed 5 floors, knocked on the door of apartment 53. Rosa opened it. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "What do you want?" "Forgiveness." Gabriel fell to his knees right there in the dirty hallway. "Rosa, I need forgiveness." "Get up." Rosa looked around, embarrassed. "The neighbors will see." "I don't care." Gabriel stayed on his knees. Tears started rolling down his face. "I was a coward. I let my wife threaten you, stayed silent when I should have defended you, turned my back on you after everything you did for me." "Gabriel, get up. I discovered something." Gabriel wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I discovered that my family deceived me my whole life, that their money was mine, that my grandmother left an inheritance for me and they kept it all. I discovered I'm not what I thought I was." Rosa was silent. Gabriel continued. "You were right. The boy from the orphanage died. I killed him, buried him, pretended he never existed. And now I have a hole in my chest that won't close, because I betrayed everything I was, betrayed my mother, betrayed you, betrayed myself." Rosa bent down, held his face. "Look at me." Gabriel lifted his red eyes. "You didn't die," Rosa said slowly. "You just got lost, but you can find your way back." "How?" "By being honest, being truthful, stopping the pretending." Rosa helped him stand. "And honoring who you really are." "The letters." Gabriel held her hand. "Please, I need to read my mother's letters." Rosa stared at him for a long moment, searching in his green eyes, searching for sincerity, searching for the boy she knew 30 years ago. And she found him. There in the depths, behind the tears and pain, was Gabriel Ferreira. "Come in." Rosa opened the door. The apartment was tiny, living room and bedroom in the same space, kitchenette, small bathroom. A young man sat in a wheelchair near the window looking at the street. He turned when Gabriel entered. "Mom, who is it?" "An old friend, Lucas." Rosa went to the closet, opened the top drawer, pulled out the shoebox tied with string. A very old friend. She placed the box on the table, slowly untied the string, opened the lid. Inside were 3 white envelopes, yellowed with time. On each was written by hand, for Gabriel to read at 10 years old, for Gabriel to read at 18 years old, for Gabriel to read when he becomes a father. Gabriel picked up the first envelope with trembling hands. opened it, pulled out a sheet of lined paper written in cursive, started reading. "My beloved son, if you're reading this, it's because I'm no longer here. I know I'm going to die in childbirth. The doctors warned me, but I have no regrets. You're worth every second I'll lose. I want you to know your mother loved you more than anything in this world, and that I was a teacher. I taught literature to teenagers, loved my work, loved seeing students discover the world through books." Gabriel had to stop. His voice failed. Tears fell on the paper. "Your grandmother, my mother, didn't accept you, but she'll regret it. I'm sure of it. And when she does regret it, she'll leave money for you. Don't let anyone use that money to control you. You owe nothing to anyone. That money is yours. Use it to be happy. Use it to be free. Use it to be who you want to be, not who they tell you to be. I love you, Gabriel. I'll always love you. Your mother, Helena." Gabriel broke down, cried like he hadn't cried since childhood. Rosa placed her hand on his shoulder, let him cry. Lucas watched, quiet, respectful. When Gabriel could finally speak again, the words came out firm. "I'm going to make peace with my past, no matter what it costs. I'll honor my mother. I'll honor who I was, and I'll fix everything I destroyed." Monday morning, Gabriel entered the Almeida family office with a folder of documents under his arm. His adoptive father, Antonio Almeida, sat behind the mahogany desk, reading the newspaper. His adoptive mother, Marta, was drinking coffee from a porcelain cup. "Good morning, son." Antonio folded the newspaper. "What a surprise. You don't usually show up here this early." "I came to settle something." Gabriel placed the folder on the desk, opened it, spread out all the documents he'd found in the attic. Contracts, receipts, bank transfers, the letter from his biological grandmother. "I came to collect what's mine." Antonio's face went pale. Marta dropped her cup. Coffee spread across the Persian rug. "Where did you get this?" Antonio stood up abruptly. "From the attic. You kept the evidence of your own scheme." Gabriel pointed at the adoption contract. 850,000 reais. "That's how much my grandmother paid you to adopt me in 1995. Only you forgot to tell me that part, didn't you?" "Gabriel, let me explain," Marta started. "Explain what? That you took my inheritance money and used it to get rich. That you bought stocks, real estate, expanded the company with my money." Gabriel slammed his hand on the desk. "That you made me believe my whole life I was some poor kid who got lucky? That I owed you eternal gratitude? We gave you everything." Antonio tried to keep his voice steady. "Home, food, education at the best schools. You had a privileged life, with money that was mine." Gabriel grabbed one of the receipts. "Here's the purchase of the beach apartment, with my money. Here are the mining company stocks. My money. Here's the factory expansion, all mine. And I never saw a single cent. What do you want?" Antonio crossed his arms. "Justice." Gabriel gathered the papers. "I hired a lawyer. We're filing a lawsuit. Inheritance fraud, embezzlement, contractual fraud. You're going to return every cent, with inflation adjustment and 30 years of interest." Marta started crying. Antonio turned purple with rage, but Gabriel felt no pity, not after a lifetime of lies. The lawsuit lasted 6 months. 6 months of hearings, forensic analysis, document reviews. In the end, the judge was clear. The Almeida family had to return the full inheritance value with all adjustments. It came to almost 2 million reais. But that wasn't all. The story leaked to the press. Businessman adopts orphan child using the boy's own inheritance money. The scandal was huge. Clients cancelled contracts. Partners distanced themselves. The Almeida family reputation plummeted. And Beatrice, she filed for divorce as soon as she saw the lawsuit. "I won't stay married to a man who used to be poor," she said. Gabriel laughed in her face. Let her take the jewelry, the imported car, the beach apartment. He didn't care about those things anymore. The divorce was quick. 6 months later it was signed. Beatrice left with half the assets, but lost her status. The high society she loved so much turned their backs. No one wanted to be seen with the woman who'd threatened a mother with a sick child. 3 months later, Gabriel saw her working as a saleswoman in a clothing store at the mall. She lowered her head when she saw him pass. He said nothing. Justice had been served. With the recovered inheritance money, Gabriel did three things. First, paid for Lucas's complete treatment, not the public health surgery. A private surgery with the best neurosurgeon in the country. Intensive physical therapy. Latest generation medications. The boy was walking with support 3 months later. Rosa cried so much when she saw her son take his first steps that Gabriel had to hold her to keep her from falling. Second, sought out the Santa Clara Orphanage. The place was falling apart, was going to close at the end of the year due to lack of funding. Gabriel bought the building, renovated everything, hired a new staff, guaranteed a budget for the next 20 years, and built a library on the upper floor. Third, placed his mother's portrait at the orphanage entrance, an enlarged photo he'd found in the old documents. Helena Ferreira, at 20, college graduation, smiling at the camera with diploma in hand. Below the photo, a plaque, Teacher Helena Ferreira Library, in memory of all mothers who loved their children to their last breath. Gabriel hired Rosa as the orphanage's educational coordinator. Salary of 10,000 reais per month, signed work contract, all benefits. She tried to refuse. "It's too much money," she said. Gabriel shook his head. "You kept my mother's letters for 30 years. There's no amount of money that can repay that." The orphanage became a model institution, well-fed children, well-dressed, with access to psychologists, private tutors, sports activities. Gabriel visited every week, talked with the boys and girls, told his story. "I also slept in these bunks," he'd say, "and look where I ended up, not because of fortune, but because I never forgot where I came from." On a Saturday afternoon, 6 months after everything, Gabriel was in the orphanage library. An 8-year-old girl approached him. "Mr. Gabriel?" "Hi," he smiled. "You can just call me Gabriel. Is it true you lived here when you were a child?" "It's true." "And now you're rich?" "I am." Gabriel crouched to her height. "But you know what really made me rich? It wasn't the money. It was remembering who I was. It was coming home." The girl smiled, ran back to her friends. Gabriel stood watching the children playing among the bookshelves. Rosa appeared beside him. "Are you okay?" "I'm at peace." Gabriel looked at his mother's portrait on the wall. "For the first time in 30 years, I'm at peace." The day of the official inauguration of the Teacher Helena Ferreira Library arrived on a sunny Saturday in October. Colorful banners hung in the orphanage courtyard, tables with cake and juice, children running around in new clothes. Gabriel had insisted on inviting all 320 children from the city's orphanage network. Rosa stood beside him at the library entrance. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back in a bun. Lucas was there too, standing with the support of a cane, smiling broadly. 6 months of intensive physical therapy had worked miracles. "Nervous?" Rosa asked quietly. "Terrified." Gabriel adjusted his tie. "I've never spoken publicly about this." "It'll work out." Rosa squeezed his hand. "Your mother would be proud." The orphanage director asked for silence. The children settled on the floor, sitting on colorful cushions. Gabriel climbed the 3 steps leading to the library, stood facing the small audience, took a deep breath. "My name is Gabriel Ferreira." His voice came out steady. "And I lived in this orphanage when I was your age." A murmur ran through the children. They looked at each other, then back at him. "I slept in the bunk in dormitory 2, 3rd bed from the left, ate in the cafeteria, showered in that shower where the water comes out freezing, wore donated clothes, tight shoes, went hungry more than once." Gabriel paused, saw the children's wide eyes, and for a long time I was ashamed of that. "When I was adopted, I pretended this part of my life never existed, changed my name, invented a new story, lied to everyone, including myself. You know why? Because I thought being poor was shameful. That living in an orphanage made me less than others, that I needed to hide my origins to be respected." A small boy raised his hand. "And now, are you still ashamed, sir?" Gabriel felt his throat tighten. "No, Now I'm proud, because this part of my life taught me to be strong, taught me to value what I have, taught me that true friendship doesn't depend on money, that family isn't just about blood, and most importantly, taught me that no one is better or worse because of where they were born. He pointed at the huge portrait of Helena on the wall. This is my mother, Helena Ferreira. She was a teacher, died the day I was born, and she left letters for me saying I should never be ashamed of who I am. It took me 30 years to understand that. 30 years running from my past. I almost completely lost myself along the way. Gabriel descended the steps, walked among the children. You'll leave here one day. Some will be adopted. Others will grow up and leave. You'll build new lives. And some people will judge you for having lived in an orphanage. They'll say you're worthless, that you have no family, that you're less important. When that happens, I want you to remember one thing. He stopped, looked around. Your origin doesn't define your destiny, but forgetting where you came from can cost you your soul. The children were silent. Then a little girl started clapping. Soon they were all clapping, standing, cheering. Gabriel felt his eyes fill with tears. After the ceremony, after the cake, after the photos, Gabriel and Rosa went to the car. But instead of going home, Gabriel drove to the other side of town. Rosa recognized the route, São Pedro Cemetery. They stopped in front of a simple grave. Just a grey granite headstone with an engraved name, Helena Ferreira, 1970-1995. Gabriel knelt, placed a bouquet of white flowers on the ground. "Hi, Mom." He ran his hand over the cold stone. "I took a while, but I'm here. Took a while, but I understood. You were right about everything." Rosa stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder. Gabriel stayed there for long minutes, in silence, just feeling the cold afternoon wind. When he stood up, there was a small smile on his face. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said to Rosa, "for keeping those letters, for reminding me who I was. I just returned what was always yours." Rosa smiled. Gabriel Ferreira never died. He was just lost. Now he's home. The two left the cemetery side by side. 30 years after the day they separated at the orphanage, they'd finally found each other again. Not as employer and employee, but as what they'd always been from the beginning, family. Because in the end, family isn't about blood. It's about who catches you when you fall, who keeps your memories when you forget, who reminds you where you came from when the world tries to make you forget. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Every week there's a new story about forgiveness, new beginnings, and how small choices can change entire lives. The next story is about a man who found the daughter he abandoned 30 years ago. You won't want to miss it.